In February 2016, a small pixel art farming game appeared on Steam. No massive ad campaign, no publisher machine behind it, no established studio, no marketing war chest, just one man, Eric Barone, better known online as ConcernedApe. At first glance, it did not look like the kind of game that rewrites the industry. It looked quiet, gentle, almost old-fashioned. A little farm, a sleepy town, a few seeds in the dirt, and yet within 2 weeks, Stardew Valley sold 500,000 copies. Within 2 months, it passed 1 million, and by 2026, it had sold more than 50 million copies across all platforms. That makes it one of the most successful video games ever made. But the number is only half the story, because behind those 50 million copies was not a 100-person team, not a publisher, not a global production pipeline. It was one person drawing every sprite, writing every line of code, composing every track of music, designing every mechanic, character, crop, cave, every tiny illusion of life inside that valley. And he did it for 4.5 years, mostly alone. This is the story of how Stardew Valley was made, and what it actually cost one man to do the work of an entire studio. Before Stardew Valley became a global phenomenon, Eric Barone was just a recent graduate trying to figure out what came next. He graduated from the University of Washington in 2011 with a degree in computer science, and then the thing that was supposed to happen didn't. He could not find the kind of job he wanted in the game industry, so instead of stepping into some dream studio, he took a part-time job as an usher at a movie theater in Seattle, and after work, he started building a game. Not because there was funding, not because he had investors waiting. He started because he wanted to become good enough. He wanted to prove that he could make something real, and the idea that pulled him in was Harvest Moon. As a kid, he loved it. A farming RPG, quiet routines, seasons changing, small town relationships, a world built out of repetition, care, and time. But as the years went on, Barone felt that the newer Harvest Moon games had lost something. They were not giving him the feeling he remembered. So he did something that sounds almost absurd in hindsight. He decided he would build the version he wished existed. At first, there was almost nothing. A character in an empty void. Just a blank screen and the belief that if he kept going long enough, a world might appear. And slowly, impossibly, it did. That is one of the strangest things about Stardew Valley. When you play it now, it feels complete, natural, effortless, as if it always existed. This is the part of the story that people know, but rarely fully understand. Yes, Eric Barone made Stardew Valley by himself, but what does that actually mean? It does not just mean he worked really hard. It means he performed the jobs of an entire game studio. He wrote the code, he created the art, he designed the systems, he wrote the dialogue, he composed the soundtrack, he made the game feel alive. Think about what that really includes. Every character portrait, walking animation, tree fence, crop stage, seasonal variation, inventory icon, weapon, cave tile, weather effect, map transition. He created all of it. And then there is the music. Stardew Valley has 57 original tracks, not licensed music, not placeholder audio, not tracks made by a hired composer. Original music written by Barone himself, despite having no major formal training as a composer. Then there is the writing. Over 30 distinct characters, each with their own routines, personalities, heart events, and dialogue. Then there are the systems: farming, fishing, mining, combat, crafting, relationships, energy management, economy balancing, inventory flow, progression pacing, and then there is QA, the invisible job that destroys romantic myths about solo development. Because when your game takes over 100 hours to fully experience, testing it means living inside your own work again and again and again until surprise disappears and only problems remain. In a professional studio, these jobs are split between specialists. Designers design, writers write, artists create assets, audio teams handle sound, engineers solve technical problems, QA teams test the build. But on Stardew Valley, all those doors led back to the same person. He was simulating an entire production pipeline by himself. The success story is real, but so is the cost. Eric Barone worked around 10 hours a day, 7 days a week for 4.5 years. That is not a creative sprint, that is a lifestyle built around obsession. And obsession has a price. He was not developing Stardew Valley from a place of comfort. He was not a millionaire in a cabin following a dream. He had no stable studio salary, no publisher advance, no outside funding. For a major part of development, his girlfriend Amber supported them while working 2 jobs. That detail matters, because behind almost every myth of the lone genius, there is invisible labor holding the story together, and then there is the mental cost. Imagine playing your own game for hundreds of hours, not as a player, but as a person hunting bugs. Imagine staring at the same systems, the same maps, the same loops, until the thing you loved starts to feel broken simply because you have seen it too many times. By the end of development, Barone struggled with confidence, not because the game was bad, but because total immersion erodes perspective. When you build everything alone, there is no natural distance between the creator and the work. No team to reassure you, no producer to impose structure, no second department carrying part of the load, just you and the terrifying possibility that after years of work, maybe it still won't matter. At one point, he took a break and built a small mobile game just to reset his brain, and near release, one of the things that helped most was outside feedback, especially small streamers and early players who tested the game, found bugs, and reminded him that there was something real here. If you do the math, the scale becomes even clearer. 4.5 years, 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, that comes out to roughly 16,000 hours of work. 16,000. A small team inside a studio could distribute that load across specialists and parallel workflows, but Barone carried almost all of it through one body, one mind, one life. The solo path worked, but it asked for years that he could never get back. Most people think the story ends here. Game launches. Game becomes a hit. Creator finally breathes. But for Eric Barone, success did not end the workload. It multiplied it. Stardew Valley launched in February 2016. And then, instead of stepping away, he kept building, still mostly alone. Update 1.1 expanded late game systems and rebalanced major parts of the experience. Update 1.3 added multiplayer, one of the most requested features from the community. Update 1.4 added events, items, maps, fixes, refinements. And then came update 1.5, a patch so large many players described it as feeling like an expansion or even a second game. Ginger Island, new quests, new progression, new mechanics, new reasons to disappear into the game for dozens more hours. Other studios might have sold that as paid DLC. Barone released it as an update, and then he announced Haunted Chocolatier. Another game, another world, another mountain of work, still built around the same impossible question: how much can one person carry? Because this is the side of solo success people almost never talk about. A solo developer who ships a game to a few thousand players gets feedback. A solo developer who ships a game to 50 million people inherits expectations at industrial scale. More bug reports, more patching, more platform issues, more requests, more pressure. Success did not free him from the production burden. It expanded it to match the size of the audience. A solo hit does not create peace. It creates maintenance. And maintenance is where many solo stories quietly become unsustainable. And eventually, the limits of solo development became impossible to ignore. Stardew Valley launched on PC, but porting the game to other platforms was a different challenge entirely. Mac, Linux, PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, iOS, Android. Each platform brings its own technical requirements, certification processes, hardware quirks, patching rules, and support demands. Barone could not realistically do all of that alone, so he partnered with external help. Chucklefish assisted with ports. PlayStation 4 and Xbox One versions arrived in late 2016. Switch followed in 2017, iOS in 2018, Android in 2019. That timeline tells its own story. The audience was there, the demand was there, the game was ready. But without built-in specialist support, expansion across platforms took years. The same pattern appeared with multiplayer. Players wanted it almost immediately. But networking is not a feature you casually add later by yourself to an already released game. It is specialized, technical, and difficult. Eventually, Chucklefish programmer Tom Coxon helped build that networking layer, and that reveals the deeper truth. Every time Stardew Valley hit a problem that required specialization, ports, networking, external support, localization, logistics, Barone had only two options: learn it all himself or stop and find help. Both options cost time, and in development, time is everything. So let's say the quiet part out loud. Stardew Valley succeeded despite the solo approach. Not because solo development is the ideal way to make a game this large. That distinction matters, because when people tell this story, they often turn the suffering into proof that the process was somehow perfect. It was not. It was heroic. It was inspiring. It was real, but it was also brutally inefficient in exactly the places where specialized support exists for a reason. Now imagine a different version of this story. Not a version where Eric Barone loses control. Not a version where a publisher strips away his vision. A version where the vision stays exactly the same, but the weight is distributed more intelligently. This is where a co-development partner changes everything. A studio like Kavuru Games exists to absorb the parts of production that do not need to live entirely on the creator's shoulders. Art production can be parallelized. Character asset creation, animation, environment support, production-ready asset pipelines. Engineering bottlenecks can be handled by specialists. Porting can be planned from the beginning instead of solved after launch. Networking can be built by people who already know how to build networking. Localization support can be coordinated without the creator becoming a one-person operations department. In Stardew Valley's case, that would not mean replacing Eric Barone. It would mean protecting what was uniquely his: the writing, the tone, the systems, the music, the soul of the game, and freeing him from the production gravity of doing everything manually. That is what smart co-development is. Not creative surrender, creative protection. The same game, the same heart, just faster execution, broader reach, and far less damage to the person making it. Eric Barone is exceptional. That is the first thing this story proves. But the second thing it proves is even more important. Most people should not copy his process, because the lesson of Stardew Valley is not that suffering is necessary. It is not that one person should try to become a programmer, artist, composer, writer, designer, producer, tester, porter, and support team all at once. The lesson is that vision matters, and vision becomes more powerful when it is not crushed by avoidable production weight. Most developers who attempt something of this scale alone do not finish. They run out of money, or momentum, or confidence, or time. Barone finished because he had a rare mix of skill, endurance, obsession, and luck. That combination is not a business model. It is an anomaly. So the more useful question for modern indie developers is not, can one person build a masterpiece alone? We already know the answer is yes. The better question is, what could that same creator build with the right support? What could happen if the vision stayed pure, but the production stopped being a punishment? Stardew Valley took one man 4.5 years. It sold over 50 million copies. Imagine what a creator like Eric Barone could do with 2 years and the right team behind him.